Hey, it's Coach Wildman. It's May 8th, 2020, and we're sitting at home probably waiting for me to go live. Hopefully we won't have technical difficulties today. Today we have head coach of the women's team at UBC, Doug Reimer. He's been around the circuit for an extremely long time, doing his thing through the national program. Big advocate on fundraising and getting more money into the female national team. So as usual, Q&A. Feel free to ask questions. Type them in the comments below. And Doug, I'll throw it over to you.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Dave. This is an awesome project, and it's nice you've been doing a lot in volleyball, and this is one way to make our country seem a little smaller, maybe on a volleyball front.
Awesome.
So,
well, tell us what you're all about. I mean, we have lots of level of coaches here, East Coast to West Coast. So tell us your history.
All right. So let's go way back. I guess, I grew up in Kelowna, BC, and I was fortunate to have a good volleyball coach show up in my grade 9 year, and that sort of swung the balance for me as a multi-sport athlete. Plus, I was too skinny and whatever to play basketball at a higher level. Are we still good there, Dave?
Yeah, you're still good. Yep.
Right. Just making sure. This is how old I am. I went to the University of Victoria and I played volleyball there. They used to have a volleyball program. And I had a coach named Bob Harrison who she passed away quite a few years ago. But he was a tremendous influence on me. And we can dive into some of these things more. But for the real old guard out there, he was the assistant coach and a manager of the men's Olympic team back when they were stationed in Calgary, and Ken Maeda was the coach. And so he got me into coaching really in a lot of ways. I was assistant coach of the men's provincial team when I was still in university. I coached a high school team while I was in university. And then I graduated, and I was actually, my degree's in history and political science, and I was about to start a program in the legislature, and a guy named Tom Graham, who played in the national team, was coaching the women's program at UVic, and he got a good paying job, coached the University of Saskatchewan men's team, and it was August, and Ken Shields was basically stuck with me, and I was 24 or 25, and I was head coach of the university program. And I did that. So I had a player on the team older than I was. A couple of years later, I got an offer of a good paying job and a very interesting position in Saskatchewan, and a true provincial team coach, a true Canada Games coach. And again, that would be something we can talk about more if you want.
Yeah.
But that was a tremendous experience leading to the 1989 Canada Games team. And then I moved back to where I was born in Winnipeg, and I coached the University of Winnipeg for 5 years, and then came back to BC where I started sort of what I would consider my home province, and started at the University of British Columbia. So my UVic friends couldn't believe I was coaching at UBC, because at the time the UBC-UVic rivalry.
Yeah, fair enough.
I was only there for a few years, and then I took a 3-year leave and coached the national team, and I came back, and that's the stuff that maybe I've been paid to coach. The stuff I wasn't paid to coach is fairly long too. I've coached, I think, from literally elementary volleyball, Mary volleyball, which made me shudder and made me really get involved in some things like what's now called Atomic.
Yeah.
Dived into that for a bit. And then all the way up through the club ranks, especially as my daughter was, moving through that. And I went back and coached her through, spent 5 years in a high school situation as well. And in 2000, myself and about 3 other people started the Thunder Volleyball Club, which is not directly associated with UBC, but has strong links because I do that. But basically, because the west side of Vancouver, there was no volleyball club at all.
Right, and they've been extremely successful, the Thunder Volleyball Club.
Yeah, I'm, pretty proud of how that's grown, maintained, and how we run. So
yeah. So do you
is that
oversee?
what you're looking for?
Yeah. Do you oversee that? Are you like the technical director, kind of like Ben Josephson with Ducks Volleyball Club and whatnot? So are you the
No, I think
overseer?
Ben gets paid, doesn't he?
I don't know. I never asked. So, like how hands on are you with your UBC schedule, right?
Yeah, and so actually this year, like I was the technical director, but I wasn't doing technical directing because I'd be too busy.
Right.
You know, it's that club. You know, I fully appreciate how hard it is for technical directors in like the provinces, right? 'Cause
Right.
you're just in it.
Yeah.
So I would say I'm on the front line of trying to make sure we're getting good, strong coaching staff because that's the key.
Sure.
Right? I wish I could have done more education with them. Or with them, but we try and do a bit. Trying to involve more coaches, younger coaches, building those staffs, and then it's setting up tryout camps, running tryouts. You know, when those first parent issues or complaints come in, deal with that. So we've got the same executive, you know, 3-4, Brenda Chin. She's sometimes on these calls, I know, and Brenda's been the treasurer. Claire Lloyd, who's former national team player, and she was a high school teacher in Vancouver. You know, that's our core executive, and then, you know, we've had other people move. This year we did grow because we realized just with the growth, and Matt Kruger, who's an assistant coach with the men's team at UBC,
Yeah.
very good coach, and, you know, working on his master's in motor learning.
Mm-hmm.
He is our he's our technical director to do more of that work, like with the coaches.
Right. Now, you know, being a U Sport coach, a very successful coach, what was the big aha moment where you were like, we need to, you know, is it developing coaches, or what did you need? What did you have to see change in the youth development to help you out as a university coach down the road?
Well, I mean, there would be a number. What do I think we need, or what
was the biggest aha moment in the sense, like, what did you want to change because you were sick and tired of maybe trying to reteach things, if you will, when athletes got to your level of play?
Well, I think, you know, I'm not really a big systems guy,
Okay.
as other coaches that work with me would know that.
Okay.
But I think it was maybe Lori that addressed on this, you know, or I can't remember which of the coaches previously talked about what a great job Glenn Hogue has done in sharing info and direction.
Yeah, I think Lori. I think every coach has mentioned that, to be honest.
So, you know, we still could use way more of that.
Right.
Right. Like I'd say on men's side, that's something I think, you know, that's a big challenge for us here. But I will say the coaches in Canada, like from what I've seen, the level of interest, engagement when we have, you know, when I'm with them, they're very open, and I don't see a lot of people going, I've got to just do it my way, right? Like,
right.
There is this openness to learn and to grow, and we're always doing that. And, you know, what we have now is technology that allows us to do it. What we've got is too much information, right? Like there's probably 3 to 4 different Pro D sessions going on today.
Right.
So does a coach do that? So we need to find the best ways to synthesize that down to make it, you know, accessible. And, you know, I find it hard to answer that question because it's like saying, what does an athlete need? Well, you know, I think it depends at the level that you're working at and where you're at. Right. So, I mean, there's, if people want to dial into it or you want to dive into it deeper, happy to talk about some of the specifics that I see that limit athletes when they get to U Sport. Like, is that?
How about this? You know, I was watching Tom Black yesterday with the Trinity Western kind of podcasting that they had going on. And is there one set skill that you think is overlooked at the club level that we need to be more effective teaching and put more attention to it?
Okay. Early on, I would say for girls, and it's not the volleyball coach's fault per se,
right.
It's more systemic,
right?
But it's the lack of good arm swing.
Okay.
And ability to that, so that down the road, your better athletes can hit with velocity and power.
Okay.
With good mechanics. So
Right.
That's one. And it's the general movement skills. It's the general movement abilities, athletic movement on court, and ability to adapt. And I know that's general, but for
Right.
the youngest people, that would be it. As you move forward, serve is ahead of passing, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And this is where both I would say some of the art and the science. How are you building that skill of handling the ball, controlling the ball as a passer, right? And just that ball control, consistency, and building that confidence, right?
Yeah.
So if it's, and it's a tough skill.
Right.
And it's something that you've got to dial in. I don't think young players appreciate, and maybe therefore coaches, every time you take a jump in level, right, the quality of the serving goes up, and passing is what's going to passing limits your ability to play.
Right. Okay. Glenn Wheatley, he has a question. I knew he would be the first. Glenn, I watched that movie that you were in, Perfect Season or whatever it was. So shout out to the cameo on that one. So, hey, Doug, we've had the fortune to share something special coaching our daughters against each other for 5 years. What is the one piece of advice you can give to coaches that are or will coach their own kids? Great question, Glenn.
Yeah, that is a great question. And I'll tell you, let's say I'll do a coaching session, and if there's Q&A after, it's individual, almost without exception. A coach that's working with their own son or daughter will come up and ask that. It's not easy, but I think you've really got to take a step back and go, you've got to separate the time that you're in the gym from the time you're going to be dad or mom, and go, this is how we're going to play. And again, it depends a bit on the age of it, but and it's really it's navigating, and it's a lot of self-awareness, knowing this is how I'm going to be as an individual in the gym, and how I am as a dad, and if there's differences there. So I think as they get older, so if they're in high school, you need to communicate especially well, in this case with the daughter, and you've got to be able to talk about it among the whole group. There's times where most likely you're going to have to take a little time, a couple of timeouts.
Fair.
Without question, you're probably it will never leave your mind that you're coaching your own daughter, I think, or your own son, right?
Right.
It's fundamentally different, but you've got to make sure that you're the leader of that whole group. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but if Glenn's got a follow-up on that one, I'd actually be happy to hear that.
Okay.
The other thing, I guess, just while somebody's coming is, coaching your own daughter, it really reinforces the fact that in some ways, every kid out there is somebody's daughter.
Yep.
You need to really approach coaching that way. How would you want your daughter to be treated, right? And teach them all that way. And I guess that's one thing as I've moved through, I used to be, like I said, when I first started, I was the same age as the players. So that creates certain, you know what I mean? Like they're looking at you probably going, do you know anything more than I? And as you get a generation or two later, and, I'm actually, there's kids I've coached who've had kids who are all playing, and you just see that generational thing move through. And I think just fundamentally the coaching, if you can, in those tough situations, always try and take that one-on-one approach. So the biggest thing I learned, I got actually unbelievably great feedback from my own daughter on how things that we were doing would affect somebody else on the team. And just reinforcing just every day those individual emotions, and these are all individual people that are going to react to things differently and are just different, not just in terms of the play. And that look of it, even if you don't have a kid on the team, if you can think of it that way, I think it'll help so many of your empathy and your understanding of where they're at.
Now, the follow-up from Glenn, and the thing I learned is the drive home needs to be non-volleyball talk. Could have saved many tears. Do you have any rules or kind of, that you give guidance to, let's say, the parents at Thunder Volleyball, where it's like, let your daughter or son or daughter speak first about volleyball. Don't go ask questions, that sort of thing. I know the Stanford coach, the old Stanford coach, is it John Dunning? Dunning. He mentioned that when he was in Calgary at a symposium that he ran, which is like, do not initiate the conversation. let the athlete initiate, the kid initiate the conversation. Do you have anything that you have guidelines wise?
Yeah. I think, and for the coach and for the parent, so the adult in there, I would say question.
Okay.
And have you centered. What was good about practice today?
Mm-hmm.
Right? How do you feel? And just let them answer. Right? So coaching is getting to know individuals.
Correct.
So for Glenn, his daughter, then he recognizes, man, if I bring this up right away and it's intense, it's going to provoke tears, no-go zone.
Yeah.
Other people are going to want to talk it out. They want to debrief. So with my daughter, it was more, what do you think of practice? She wanted to know what you think of that and so and so. And it was very healthy and productive, so 97% of the time, So like I really enjoyed the post-car rides.
Yeah.
So for that parent, but I would say the issues for coaching club sport and the number of incidents we get that involve coach, parent, kid, parent thing is off the charts.
Yep.
Right? Mm-hmm. And so I don't know as clubs, like I know our club, we try and do some stuff like early on in the trial process in the coach meetings, right? In terms of that. And the coaches that do a good job with that, with their parents and have that level of respect, things go way more smoothly.
Yeah, agreed.
Increasingly, I think we need to be thinking more about the education of parents and finding that balance. Like, I think we're all worried as coaches about over-involved parents for legitimate reasons. But in some ways, maybe we got to reset this a bit and talk about educating parents more, right? About the sport. And it's one of the huge challenges we have in our sport, right? Like, you got parents think they understand sport. Very, very few of them understand coaching or volleyball. And we got a special guest today.
Yeah, my cat keeps bugging me here. So, I mean, with my club specifically, we try to educate parents at the start of the season. But I feel with the years that I've done this, that the people that want to listen or the people that don't want to listen are just not going to listen no matter what, Right. And we can try to drill this point home until we're blue in the face, but you can't, I'm with you. We got to try to educate them, but at least document it. But I feel, and I'm a bit jaded. You can't teach old dogs new tricks type of thing, right? So everyone is has their own way, right? So
yeah. And I'll tell you, this is where I think club structure has to help, right? So when I said in terms of club, this is where I'd intervene. Yeah. And I'll bring the heavy hand. Like, we'll obviously investigate if there's any issues, but talking with coaches about how to manage the situations.
Right. Yeah.
And prevent, to do enough things that you prevent some of these things, that's going to be really important, right? Yeah. Try and keep them on board and online. Yeah. And, those parents, they're pretty demanding. So you need guidelines around this, but you also need good communication. For sure. You need that club structure. Yeah. The other things we'll do, like in our club, is make sure, sometimes we won't expand, like to fill the need of the kids. Like we'll run smaller numbers of teams in total because in part so that we've got a strong lead coach and we've got younger coaches maybe, but we don't throw them out there too early. Yeah, and in terms of being the head coach, right? Yeah. So a strong lead coach, and then I've found that then the parents, they kind of get that sense right away. Okay, I'm not going to challenge as much. They may be in the stands or off in the side, but they're not affecting the coach as much, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. And I feel that, if you, let's say you have 100 kids show up to tryouts, you're like, okay, we can make a third team. In my experience, it's those third teams that are the ones that cause you the most problems. The ones that you're like, hey, you know what? We're going to create a team here so you can play. And then they're the ones that end up biting you in the ass at the end anyways, and being kind of ruffling the feathers as much as possible. So yeah, it's a fine line, because you want to help, you want kids to play, but it's also how much headache is this going to bring on type of thing, right? So
yeah, and so that's where I think just in terms of coaching in general, right? Coaches need to develop their competence, right?
Yeah,
and you need that piece. Coaches need to show that they're caring for the kids and talking to the kids.
Yeah.
Right. So that, and I think people have said, I look at clubs sometimes, to be honest, from the outside when I'm recruiting, and there's coaching behaviors there that if I was a parent, I would not be happy with, and I would be raising with a club director.
Fair.
Right.
Fair.
And so this is not just they're always wrong, right? And parents are wrong, and they're going to speak up more than they would have when, my parents would never have, been shown up, and there basically wasn't club volleyball, so I guess you didn't have to worry about it.
Right.
So, the demands on coaches at all levels, I would say, are increasing in a number of areas.
Yeah, for sure.
And this is one of them.
Yeah. Got a question here from Len. Coach Doug, after the initial email contact has been made by the player with their desired post-secondary team or teams, what are some best practices for players should employ with their second, third, and fourth to make themselves more visible to be recruited?
Okay, that's a good question, and I think could be a really helpful role that club coaches can help guide players on.
Yeah,
because there's a huge range that you'll see in terms of tech there. So my advice on that is, so if that first email hasn't been answered, I would encourage the player to reach out again, to resend. Okay.
What sort of timeline on that? Because you guys are busy.
A week or 2 weeks.
Okay, fair enough. Yep.
Yep. And different coaches are going to, because they will miss some. But if you don't get much after that, and you're a club coach advising a player, the first thing I would do is start to look and go, is this realistic? Like looking at the levels of program and where this athlete is. And if it is, then that coach, if they've got the time, hey,
okay,
athlete X, and maybe you didn't get back to her, but this is what I think she brings. I think she's in the ballpark, or whatever as the case may be. So that's where the coach can play a role.
Right.
I think maybe the ability to get the information, to preview the info that's getting sent, right?
Yeah.
So that it's not ridiculously long in the whole thing. Like, frankly, the fact that, grade 8 on the ringette team, and all the different awards you got out of that. No. Is this kid a multi-sport athlete, a talented multi-sport athlete? That should be highlighted. Came a little bit late. That's great information, right? That's going to help me when I look. Here's a quick link. Here's the link. Make it as easy as possible and as short as possible, right? So the follow-up, do it a week or two later.
Okay, and let's have a side question from that. If they send video, what do you want to see as a coach?
Okay. Personally, I want to see a well put together highlight reel to start with.
Okay.
If I don't know the athlete.
How long?
Okay. You can see a lot in 3 minutes.
Okay, fair enough. Yep.
Okay. So what do you want to see? So from the things I saw before, if this is an attacker, you want to see their, how are they attacking the ball, and not just everything that's perfectly in system. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you.
Variation on a couple of different swings and approach, and long enough clip so you actually see them move.
Yeah. Agreed.
Do you
Yeah.
see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, totally.
Not just 2 seconds, like boom, 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 where you can barely see the approach, and then you're looking at the next one, and you know.
So you don't want to see like six. You don't want to see 6 packs one after another.
No, unless they have so many of them.
Okay.
Then it's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
No, what I'm getting at is you actually see them move from pass to attack, from defense off the net on at least a couple of these. But now we're seeing Armstrong attacking. Often, like, you want to see some of that movement ability. You don't need to see 45 serves, right? You don't need to see 45 serves where you can't see their mechanics, right? All they have the ball in the court and they ace the kid. Well, what is a coach really looking at?
Right.
You know, you want to see what those mechanics look like. You know, are they driving the ball with velocity, etc. So on the key skills, and don't forget about blocking and blocking movement. Don't forget those kind of things, because again, that's movement stuff that's going to be really hard for somebody to change. So once you've got that there, a second link that the coach could watch to a set of play or something else, that some coaches will want to watch that right away.
Okay.
But in my estimation, you know, once you've had a bit of gameplay, so whether that's a separate link or at the end, you know, of some highlight stuff, then you've got a sense of it. Coach is going to be interested, should want to see then a little bit more video down the road, right? Like that won't give you everything.
Right.
So you would look at that more.
Okay. Question from the head coach of Thompson River University women's team, Chad Grimm. Was rooting for you this year, Chad. You guys did well. Doug, as you mentioned, you aren't a big systems guy, and I have always respected how you are willing to change things up to get the most of your personnel you have. How are you able to get the buy-in, flexibility within your players to be willing to make these changes, as I know this can be difficult? Good question.
Yeah, thanks, Chad. So I'll take a general look on that. I think advice to coaches generally is you need to be authentic to who you are and what you do, right? So that's some of this coaching stuff, and so going about it is going to be based on who you are. So that's who I am, and you got to be comfortable with that. And if you're comfortable with that, your communication around it is going to be better. So specifically, this takes work. So we actually tell recruits, people coming in, we are looking for the best answers to give for you, fit you in. Like we're not trying to plug you into a hole, right? And into a specific spot. And our goal is team success, getting the best people, doing the most stuff. And it takes an understanding and a willingness. The assistant coaches really got to be on board as well with this, that we are going to work through situations to try and create, because we have to begin with the end in mind. Where are we going to get to by the end of the season, right? Where are we going to get to by the end of this person's career? And we need to keep that front and center. So to answer Chad's question, it takes work, and you've really got to have a good feel of the room, I think, and talk about it. Other things that we could dive into is, I think for most college programs now, they have some kind of a senior leadership group, a player group, you know, club coaches, you know, captains, and talk to other people. I think you got to dive down into that level during the season. If you're sensing, you know, and you go, how is this going? Is there anybody, you know, kind of not on board, and just get more communication there. I would also say you need to start this early. This is part of a coaching philosophy.
Right.
This is our program and coaching philosophy, and it's something I value, and I've got to express that, and then we've got to engage the athletes. This is a position of strength. Like our philosophy here for our group, we're doing it this way and get to a position of strength for our program to get that buy-in.
Right. And
do you think that answers what he's getting at?
Yeah, I agree. No, and with that being said, I feel that what's your take on how you communicate with players? I know that I got to witness one of your practices last time I was in BC, and you don't talk down to them. Of course, you're like on the same level. You seem like you have a really tight knit relationships with your athletes. So how do you get to that point? With that line of communication and faith with each other and trust.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned some of the keywords there, and I think you're in coaching is building the trust build. It's trust building.
Yeah.
And that's day in and day out.
Yeah.
And, we have the luxury as a post-secondary coach of going for 5 years. And so some of this is going to be based on the athletes coming in the program. They're hopefully going to funnel into an environment where there is trust. This is ongoing.
Yeah.
This can change in a heartbeat with an individual athlete. And so you never think, okay, I've got this case. I come back to, so the examples would be, I come back to, I'm so old, I still quote John Wood. All right. And, the athlete's got to know that you care. They got to know you're interested in them as a whole person. So the specific things is, if you can do, I've never met, like, if anything, the athletes want more individual, not just feedback and critique, but individual attention, right? I wish I had more hours, and I'm trying to organize more individual meetings, but I'm trying and do more to reach out or have somebody else in your coaching staff check in. How are they doing?
Yeah.
How's feeling? Little surveys on this kind of stuff. And so this is, I think, the art of coaching, that communication and figuring out when you're pushing a little bit more and when you're backing off, and athletes start to feel that.
Doug, you're not that old. You have a TikTok. You're an internet sensation. So I did see it.
I was trying to keep that on the down.
Oh, now everyone knows.
During the pandemic.
Yeah. Shannon Windsor has a question for you. Hey, Doug, I look way back to when I played for you, and I think my experiences at UBC had a big impact on how I coach today. And when I told you that a few years ago you said that you had come a long way as a coach, I'm curious what have been your biggest developments as a coach. Compare 2002 Doug to 2020 Doug. Good question, Shannon.
Wow. Yeah, great. See, I am old. I coach Shannon.
Shannon's young though. So.
Yeah, she is. I start to reflect on that, and I thought about that a little bit in terms of that Saskatchewan team coaching Canada Games last year was inducted. It was 30-year reunion and inducted in the SAS Sport Hall of Fame. And, seeing these people develop as people with their own kids. Mm-hmm. So one of the ways that I think I've changed is I was way more in the early years. I was just worried about the end result, I think, right now, dialed in. And I think because I was so young when I started, I approached coaching more as a player. And so I thought I had to create all the intensity.
Fair.
In the practice.
Yeah.
I had to create the motivation. And I was and there was good things in that too.
Right.
So that I hope Shannon to tell me whether it's true or not, but in 2002, whether the practice environment was enjoyable, whether it was fun, whether I think it was intense, hopefully intense enough to push through. What's changed now is actually something Shannon would have witnessed is, I think Tom Black, one of the best things I got out of hanging out with the national team gym last year at the Richmond Oval was his ability to question and ask the athletes and engage with them is something I always kind of wanted to do, but I never stopped practice to do it. I would do it after or before because I thought we were wasting time.
Right.
So now that pause and that engagement and stepping back more often is something that I think I've done. The practice in 2002 would have had way more drills in it. And I would have thought I had to come up with funky, creative things all the time. And sometimes that's, I think if it's for a good purpose, that was good. But now we would just play more. We would play with a purpose.
Okay.
Right? So play more. So they're learning the whole games. Specific times for tutoring positions. We probably do more position specific thing and then find creative ways to bring those together. So there is, Shannon, there is actually a bit more, there is more structure to the practice now, but there'd be fewer drills per se.
Just a follow up from Lori Eisler, her assistant coach. She mentioned does all the practice planning and whatnot. Is this something that your assistant coaches do, or are you the kingpin on designing the practice? And how does that go with your program?
Yeah, and again, we tried a few different things. Some of it's depended a bit on timing of our training and availability of assistant coaches beforehand.
Fair.
Let's say.
Yeah.
So what we tried something is we'll put down at the end of looking ahead week by week, what do we want to get done this week? So we'll do Google Docs around that. Okay. And we'll share around that and add to that. So as we're looking through a weekend, and so I encourage club coaches to do this as well, right? Like you maybe not competing every weekend, but let's say it's every couple.
Sure.
Just say that. So you can't figure out everything that's going on, but you remember from, whatever, your Premier 1 to your Premier 2, like as you're going that, don't forget what happened in that first tournament and the longer term things you need to work on for the next 2 to 3 weeks. But then with assistant coaches, to answer the question, we're, if possible, gathering beforehand to discuss, right? And we're crafting it out on the whiteboard.
Yeah.
So for this year, bigger whiteboard, we're out there, I like working that way, getting their input. I would have assistant coaches. So for example, Ethan, who's been with me for a long time, he's often taking care of the first bit of the practice,
yeah.
the ball control stuff, and we'll suggest this. And then we'll talk how we're splitting off groups from there. And then I would tell Jody, she's just been with us 2 years, but okay, who's going to manage this? And so that we're really clear, because we have the luxury of using more than one court, which I know high school or club situation often you wouldn't.
Yeah.
But what is getting done there, and so that those pieces are clear, and that doing the best we can. Either, one thing that I know I need to do way better at, is that evaluation at the end of practice, right? With the coaches, yes. And we've started to do, that's when I'm coming back to national team and questioning the athletes as we're debriefing. What'd you like about that drill? What didn't you like about that drill? I'm getting them to give feedback. Was that effective? We did this. We tweaked a drill we know well. So I'll do that more. Just here's the drill, but a slight change to emphasize a different scoring system or, a different way of rewarding stuff. How do we get this? How do we get this done? And then I'll check in with the athletes. What do you think? Did they do that? And at first they're going to be super hesitant. Mm-hmm. They're not going to answer. But the same people will just answer. You need to encourage that questioning, right? And frankly, that's going to help me. Talking to those assistants and doing that. So the short answer is it's a joint work on in terms of practice plan, but as those assistant coaches I'm ultimately responsible for the practice plan, I would say.
Question from Leah here. Doug Reimer, although we need to implement team systems to be able to teach kids how the game works, how much would you focus on that at the younger ages? I'm just going to continue through the question here. Should we be teaching kids more about reading and reacting at younger ages, or is that something that would come at the later stages? Good question.
Very good question, and a strong yes to helping kids understand what we mean by reading and reacting early.
Okay.
So that's why if people have dived into, like John Kessel, or look at any of his things, the game teaches the game.
Yeah.
Right. So if there's another way that I have changed since 2002, I would have done master's work after that in motor learning and some other things, from early in my career that I didn't have the luxury of when I first started. And that's really influenced me in terms of how to approach coaching. Every single activity you're doing with kids, if you can ask yourself, especially young kids that are in early stages of learning, is this going to transfer? How can I maximize transfer? And early on, they don't understand the sport at all. You've got to be really good at explaining that. And I think we moved a long way in terms of coaching, of getting away from the, staying too long on the basic parts of the progression so that somehow it looks, until it all looks perfect. You get no points for artistic merit in our sport.
Right. Yeah.
So if our sport is read and react.
Yeah.
Exactly as the thing. The systems aren't that much different. And I know people want to know where to go, but they got to understand how to play the game and how to move.
And I think Volleyball Canada has done a better job of that over the last few years, just kind of changing some of the vocabulary and language and keeping it consistent amongst their education programs and stuff like that regarding cue reading and all that sort of stuff. So I think we're heading in the right direction for sure.
Yeah, and I would encourage coaches to get very comfortable with that, knowing those initial cues.
Yeah.
But there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
Because now you've got to look at what that kid, your U14 player, and they may just need more time, but they may need a different way of having that expressed or encouraged.
So that question was from one of your prior athletes, Leah. I might say her last name wrong. Pezer.
She's not just an athlete. She's doing her PhD. She's in your city now. She's doing.
She's in Calgary.
Trust.
Yeah, she's big on the beach circuit.
Also assistant coach.
Okay?
So it's that's one of the most rewarding things that players come back and tremendous coach. And I've been just really fortunate that way over the last decade or more with just some of the people that have helped, and Leah's definitely one of those. Thanks, Leah, for watching. Considering she's got 2 kids and a PhD to work on right
now. Next question is from Penny Brennan from Calgary. You mentioned earlier our swing mechanics is a skill needing to focus on younger ages. Can you break it down how you would introduce this technique at the early stages, such as U12 or 13? What kind of drills would you do to introduce it?
Okay, so number one is you're not going to get it all done in your 1 or 2 hour session. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you need kids throwing the ball, hitting the ball, getting comfortable. So did she ask U13?
U12, U13, yeah.
Yeah, U13. So I'm going to get my hand in there.
Yeah.
Nice, big, open hands surrounding the ball. Let them actually hit the ball, like warm up their arm against the wall. Just get them more and more comfortable. Doing things over the net, right? Mm-hmm. Like throwing under the net, giving them different tasks. Heck, at even U13, I'd go play. Well, you're probably not allowed to play dodgeball anymore, but tell them to go home and throw the thing with mom and dad, right? Their sibling, play catch. Like literally, that is what we need. That's why we need multi-sport. We need them playing 4 months of softball.
Yeah, no, right? For sure.
I think people know that. So the other things would be, how many reps can you get them reps where they're doing stuff? Maybe not U12, U13, but they need to try and be okay to fail. Like a self-toss and hit the ball, right? Like started earlier, it may not always look. You need to identify then the ones that are really struggling, right? That have not had any background in any kind of throwing activities, and you've got to this is where you need somebody else to help you. That kid needs to get a little extra attention off to the side, or extra reps at the beginning or at the end, or something like that, so they don't continue to fall further and further behind.
Great.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, that's great answer.
Okay, lots of reps.
Yeah, and I know John Kessel from Volleyball USA is a big activist on just everything's over the net. Everything's over the net. No matter what you do, use the net, use the net, use the net. So he's a great guy. Glenn Wheatley, again. Glenn, you're he's a loyal one. Glenn is. All right, Glenn, here we go. So since you have been around so long, how has technology changed your coaching philosophy? Good question, Glenn.
Really good question again, because it's one of the things. And back to, when I started, we barely watched any video, right? Like just the structure of stuff. So imagine that. And so just tell a quick little. It used to be you'd be pulling a VHS tape in and out. So for some people that probably never even seen that. And so I would say a couple of things. Some of this is money driven, right? In some ways, like with the national team at the time, when I was coaching, we just didn't have the money to compete on the technology front. But it was something at the time. I remember Doug Beal from the U.S. saying, we're talking to him about it, and so I'm dating myself. This is like 2000, all right? But he said they never took on a whole new platform or a different kind of technology unless they did it within like the first year of the quad.
Okay. Yeah.
So I still carry forward that general thought. Don't just take on technology if you don't think you're going to be able to use it. Understand how to use it and incorporate it. Okay. And there's so much out there. Now, how this has changed now is it's changed. Like, look at Zoom, look at this in the last, and how we even communicate with athletes. But specifically, we're on volumetrics. Yeah. And so for the coaches that aren't familiar, all our athletes, they're getting, all our matches are tagged, right? And we get that the next day. And so coaches are, you can now funnel through very well each athlete's clips. Yeah. But more importantly than that, it's changed because we will involve them a lot more. Right. We'll get them to look and assist and break down both their own play and other things. So I'll give you another example. What we did is which seems like a long time ago now in the land of COVID, but the year-end, for their review, their individual meetings with me at the end of the season, the players had to go back over matches and identify the areas in some skills where they're doing things well and the areas that they got to get better at, so that they have to isolate and then we meet. Okay. So I would throw that out there for, younger coaches too. Like maybe they can find ways, even if they don't have, as much technology systems, can they get players to look at what they did there and identify what's going well and what's got to get better, right? Engage them so that the coach isn't always handing it down and saying, doing it this way. And frankly, as a club coach, you're not going to have time. So you got to figure out on the technology front to do better. One last comment on that is I hire young bucks that can understand this stuff way better. So we've got an assistant coach, former men's player, and he's dialing into this stuff in a deeper way, and it's going to be an ongoing challenge. It's a good thing I'm retiring in the next 20 years because otherwise it's going to be really hard.
All right. Next question is from the legend Lee Carter. Now that you're playing more, you mentioned that you play a lot in practice. Now that you're playing more in practice, do you worry more about jump volume, and how do you control that volume? Good question.
Very good question. So, 2 years ago, we were using vert technology, so we were counting jumps. Yeah. We've done that with the whole team. We've done that with players that we're concerned about, individual ones. But I'll tell you, even if you don't have that, here's what I would suggest for other coaches, is this is back to the check-in on the athletes, okay, in terms of volume. Like you should have a sense of how often you're practicing. Lee's question is great because we've got a really long season, right? And we're playing and on the weekend. So how do you manage that, the recovery? So I would suggest very simple check-in. Like we'll do some online wellness surveys. The athletes have to complete a couple of times a week, so we know how they're feeling. And then our student trainers are dialing in to see, kind of daily where they're at. But I'll just ask. So if you're a club coach without these things, just go. How are your needs? How is that volume? The next thing that I would suggest on this front is, while you're playing more, we're not doing it all practice. You're taking breaks. You're taking serve and pass breaks. And if you look at it in terms of number of jumps when you're actually just playing, it's not that high. Where you really got to be careful is when you're in small group training sessions, and let's say you're just working with three middles and a setter. That's when you really got to monitor volume.
Now, do you still use?
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you still use Vert, that technology, the Vert app?
This year, for a variety of reasons, we didn't.
Okay.
And we actually had, it in and of itself. Like, I think Vert's great. And we're making some great progress. And I know our men's team at UBC is outstanding in terms of how they like me, Karen McDonald, the way, and Mike Hawkins does just a phenomenal job. And so, I mean, it's an expense. I see us going back to it. I'll spare you the reasons why.
Sure, fair enough. Another question from Lee Carter. NCAA is looking at removing double hit on second contact. What do you feel about how that would affect the game? Another great question.
Well, yeah. Removing it altogether. Let me think about that.
All right.
I am definitely a proponent of letting the players play more and having that called less, okay, overall. So if the rule was, I'd like to think about that more, but on the surface of it, I'd be willing to start to move down that route, which is hard for us old guard to go. Yeah, get rid of that. Now you're going to get 2 more questions from referees, aren't you?
We'll see what happens here. No, we got another one here. Go ahead.
I think for younger referee, let me give you an example for younger people. It would bother me when I coached high school, and to be honest, inexperienced referee, all of a sudden, out of the blue, calling double contact, right? Just because they feel they needed to make a call or their view of it. And what I really hate to see at the younger levels is I see some setters they get called 2-3 times in a set, and they're scared to set the ball.
Yeah.
The last thing in the world we need is a 14-year-old that is trying to learn the skills of the game and they've got enough to worry about. And so, how often does a double hit really help you?
Good question. I don't. Not really.
So, yeah. So I would err, if we didn't get rid of it, I would err on calling things that actually give you an advantage in an area where they shouldn't.
Okay. Karsten Stanjak from Alberta here. How do you recruit and convince top Canadian athletes to stay in Canada versus going down to the NCAA? What's your secret, he says?
I don't have a secret. So I start with, they got to be a good fit for a university. And so we would talk a lot, like UBC is a strong academic program, I understand grades. And, really I talk to student athletes. We're here to try and help them. It's going to be different than maybe they would be in a top NCAA program. But frankly, I would push, look at the track record of success that Canadian universities, and if it's UBC in particular, has had. We've had a lot of players, great players, come through and do very well, in terms of moving on to national team programs. So if that's something someone's interested in, we can help them for a whole host of reasons, right? And so academics to me is first and foremost, you're a student and an athlete, and we will support you through that. And if they're interested in that, frankly, I think sometimes from Canada, they can access some summer programs more easily from Canada. You can, if the FISHU games are in August, there's no NCAA athlete there. A U Sport athlete or Canadian athlete can still be there. I think there's different reasons, but frankly, you'll get a feel. I used to get really upset early on. It's like, oh, how did we lose this kid? Kid went to the States. I don't do that anymore. I want to have the chance to lay out here in terms of long term and your life. Here's what we have to offer.
Okay.
That we could talk about for a long time.
Yeah, no, are you okay if we go another 10 minutes here? I know that this is normally an hour, but we got questions coming in and there's a lot of people watching, so if it's okay with you.
Yeah, fire away.
All right.
Shut me down when I talk too long.
No, it's all good. Beethan has a question for you. Doug, how could younger coaches do a better job of mixing random versus block training? Mm-hmm. Great question.
Okay, good question.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to presume that people understand the difference. So this is like a motor learning question, okay?
Okay.
So block trainer, just quickly, I'll try and answer it within the structure of the question. And
Okay.
I think what he's getting at is you have to be careful going too far one way or the other. Like those youngers, he's talking like U12 to U15, 16 younger kids. If you just let them go out and play, they don't have any basis from what to do. Like,
right.
You need to narrow this down more. And I'll say Kessel wouldn't like this answer. And we've argued back and forth on this. But to me, there is definite times, like play a little bit of 4-on-4. Like use that as your warm-up. And as a young group, that's not even hitting, right? You're passing, setting, jumping, setting it over the net. Maybe there's rotation, half court, all those kind of things. And then you need to take it out of there. And then I'd say you go, okay, where did this break down? Well, it broke down because, let's just say, setting, we couldn't actually set it into the back of the court because we're U13, right? All right, why not? Okay, now you find creative ways to reinforce your keys in more of a block situation where instead of one kid, like let's say in that 5 minutes of 4-on-4, they actually only set a ball in a good situation 3 times.
Right.
Now you got to spend 5 minutes and go let them set it 55 times. All right, and I'll just stay with my example to do it. They can't really set balls very well yet. So now we need to do something where they back and they're just working hand position, structure the ball. You're going around, you're making sure it's at least on the right track, and they're setting the ball and it's bouncing and they're coming underneath it and they're setting it again or setting to themselves, and you give them lots of reps and let's go back into 4-on-4. That would be my simplest thing. So you take breaks, reps, game, and that's going to be the creativity of going, what does this group need and how can I move them and not lose the weakest kid? And I'll throw in one more thing there.
Yep.
And that would be maybe you've got 12 kids and one coach, find a second coach somehow, some way. That second coach could be entering the ball, like or just monitoring the 4-on-4 game, and you are rotating off to the side. You're doing the actual coaching, working with them in a more block, meaning controlled, focused session with 2 or 3 kids, and rotate those through. Rotate them and give them that kind of attention. Does that make sense?
Makes sense, yeah. Question from Hugh Bartlett.
Beethan probably would have answered that differently, but I don't know. We want to get that up there.
Okay. Hugh Bartlett, how much time do you spend on mental training, team versus individual sessions?
Okay. I believe playing volleyball is mental training for the first thing.
Okay.
And this is, again, when you're stopping and asking them what they see and what they do and how do they feel. So back to Shannon's question, 2002, I don't think I knew the word mindful. And now I probably say it too much. All right. So we don't do that many separate team sessions, okay, on sports psych, but we do some. And we have somebody that helps us with that. But then I look at my job is to be reminding players when things aren't going well, right? Well, let's take a break. What are we feeling here? When did this happen again? What does this remind us of? Oh yeah, last weekend when we
shit the bed?
When we imported.
Okay.
Exactly. Right?
Yeah.
So as a team, and we take a pause and a stop and a timeout. Not a 5-minute timeout listening to a coach. What do you guys feel there? How'd that go? quick huddle, back at it. What happened here? We got to communicate better this and that. More often, I would say it's individual in the following ways. Again, something else, that game is going on, pull that player out. Hey, what do you think? Well, yeah, I couldn't hit that ball out of system again, and it makes me, and I feel like I'm losing, da-da-da-da. And now you've got to become their guide, their coach. So what do you think? Don't you remember when you did it well? Didn't you do it well last weekend, right? Like, go back. What's interfering with that? So one of the things I say a lot is the player's achievement, what you're going to get to, equals skill minus interference. And your job as a coach is build that skill, right? So the things from the previous question we talked about. But that interference piece is huge in the sport. So how do I, as a coach, limit the amount of interference that player is having? And those are sometimes individual interventions, right? Back to your earlier things, like I think sports psychology is finding the creative ways. Can we visualize this? Like, does that work for you? Can we, like observational learning is maybe more on the motor learning side, but look at that. Look at how good that is, right? Can we do that again and get that engagement, right? Our sport has the beauty. Remember, Mark Crawford's daughter played at UBC, and something that stuck with me is, and I think we all know this, is like coaching hockey, all of a sudden, boom, one bad goal, boom, you're done, right? And we can make a whole lot of mistakes. Like he would tell our athletes when I bring them in, you can make a whole bunch of mistakes. And it's something I say to all the time to young kids, like how many mistakes can you make? I don't know, a lot. Yeah, you could be really bad for 20 points. What are you doing? And how do we teach recovery skills to athletes? Point by point, set by set, day by day. The final thing, Hugh, in case he's wondering about that, is there are times, definitely, and this is where you need one-on-one discussions with somebody that's going to help you. And that could be like assistant coaches are taking some players and checking in and making sure how are they feeling, how are they doing. That piece needs to be done too.
Now, you talked about, this day and age with kids trying to check in on kids, fellow athletes and stuff like that. How do you deal with, we're all human, we all make mistakes. How do you deal with an athlete who's kind of gone astray from the vision, the culture, the long-term goal? How do you wheel them back in? Is it you? Is it your assistant coaches? Is it the fellow athlete? How do you deal with those sort of things?
Yeah, well, good question. It would depend on the situation.
Sure.
I guess a little bit what you're involved in. I would say at different points, it's all of these things. Don't think you're going to solve all of it. But I would suggest at times listening, And so sometimes they just need, that's into this to follow up on the last one.
Yeah.
If it's at that point, you're pulling in and going, what's going on?
Right.
Right. And I would say more often than not, it's things that, and Christy's saying, it's outside things, pressure from school, home, other aspects that are coming into the performance environment or into the gym environment and spreading from there.
Yeah.
And, like sometimes they're going through they're going through stuff. For other people, it becomes a habit. And sometimes it's their default thing. I don't have any confidence. It's not, it's like you got to work through with them,
Yeah.
And I've learned a lot from, we have a sports psychologist who, performance person. She's a counseling psychologist within an department. She works with their team. And it's been very valuable for me over the last about 5 years or so, just to see how she works and how she goes through things and try and model a bit of that behavior, even though obviously I'm not, we're not clinical. We can't do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the processes we can.
Ethan has a follow-up question. I think we touched base on this earlier, but we'll throw it out there. When you survey the Canadian club volleyball landscape, what do you think we need to be doing better as coaches to elevate the sport in terms of performance?
Right. So specifically in terms of performance, so Boy, there's a lot of things. I struggled with that the first time. You'd think I could get better the second time. Younger people, I think we still got to encourage multi-sport. And so I'm going to start with that.
For sure.
And because I am really worried, increasingly worried, when I first started coaching, our players, don't take us the wrong way. I used to joke, it's like we used to hurt the players. Like by the end of 4th or 5th year of university, then they were breaking down. A whole bunch of our injuries now occurring, even athletes that are entering.
Right.
So volume, teaching. So I'll give you one or two things. I'm getting recruit tapes and we're reaching out to kids that are landing every time they jump on one leg. Okay. So there's ACL just waiting to happen.
Yep.
So in a couple of things, we need better balance in terms of what they do. So multi-sport used to take care of that. Breaks in the season used to take care of that. But now they're enrolled in every camp, everything, and they're going hard year round.
Yeah.
It's the only silver lining in COVID. Some of these kids with overuse injuries are forced to take a break.
Right. Yeah,
so
fair.
You need, as a coach, to manage their volumes. And the kids, you've got to do some of this individually. So the kids that are on multiple teams and doing all sorts of stuff, somebody has to go, listen, you got to slow this down. Like, you're doing too much here, and it's not helping you. So what you really need to be better is our best kids. Like, for sure, be talking with Shannon about the NET program. So for the very top kids, something like that is going to be just tremendous, right? Where they're going to get real focus on getting better. One more quick thought on that is for coaches out there, worry so much less about, like, try and set up your environment and culture. It's hard because everybody wants to win. But frankly, that U14 success, if you're not trending in the right way, won't yield to U17, U18 success, right?
Yeah.
And you get, I think most coaches would get what I mean by that. Like, we have to be the adults. We have to take the step back. Kids and parents are not going to understand LTD. It's up to us to push to do the right things in that regard.
Okay, we got 3 questions left here. From Rick Scott at Dalhousie. What would be some of the biggest changes in the women's game from when you started your university coaching career until now? What do you see might be changes in the future?
Well, good question.
Yeah, good one.
Don't ask tough questions. Where's the softball one? So biggest changes. Number one, I mean, the rules have changed and that impacted things.
For sure.
Okay. So pre-libero to post-libero rally score. So rules will dictate how things change. So the diversity the speeds of offense, that is one. Things like in the women's game, what you would do with like your middle blockers, running slide, dealing with that. So that would be big. And I would say how I look at things differently now, partly because of that, is blocking is a lot harder and everybody's got to become a good blocker. All right.
Okay.
We didn't used to worry about that much. So
Right.
if you were just a good smaller outside hitter and then you could do it. Now, if you're a smaller outside hitter, smaller setter, somehow, some way, you've got to make sure you're not a horrible blocker. And you've got to learn to do that. I am missing probably about 3 or 4 key things. So I'll just pause for a sec while you're looking at that next question and think other changes from there. A lot of the other things, the basis of our sport, I love Mark Dunphy's line about you got to serve in, hit in, and battle hard, right? So I find myself when things aren't going well, a university team or a U12 team, serve in, hit in, battle, that's going to get you part way there.
Final question from the coaches that are viewing here. Kent Lobster, a comment that used to be made while UBC was consistently in the finals but wasn't closing out the big games was the energy coming from the coaching staff. Have you intentionally focused on your behaviors as the head coach? What do you think took UBC from always bridesmaids to a finisher program?
Good question. Kent used to play at UBC, so he was probably looking at us as we would lose. Yeah, we lost back-to-back national finals as an example.
Right.
People with championship teams for a couple of reasons, and he is totally on the right track there. Like, those are gutting losses that make you really reflect. And I think over time, gotten much better at, it's the part of coaching that I don't think a coach should ever tire of. Like, I heard Ben talk about that, just it's such a crapshoot when you get there. But can you, in those really high pressure times, do your best to help the athletes, help teams stay in the moment, even doesn't look great and not spin out of control? I think coaching energy has a huge part of that. So that's back a little bit, that you recognizing yourself, this is what's going on, and addressing it openly. Okay. And I would add more particular answer on that when it comes back to a couple of things we talked about earlier. You do the thing. You have to trust the group and what's going on, and you got to remind them. You got to find the ways, whether that's non-verbally, verbally. Hey, trust what we've done. Let's give this a shot. A quote I've used a couple of times in those key things is just saying, hey, it always feels like a failure in the middle of whenever it's going on. And confidence means a good team goes, yeah, it's only the middle. We're going to come out of this. And I think it probably took winning a championship to go, okay, yeah, this is how. And then enjoying the challenge of trying to repeat that again. But, I wish I could say there was one thing, but I think his question referred to the emotions out of the coaches and controlling, being able to control that. And it's something I think with experience you have to really pay attention to. And I hope that I've gotten better at that.
Final question here from Kent as well. You routinely take multiple support staff with your program. What do you look for in your assistants, and why do you invest time in developing them as much as your athletes?
Yeah, and I'm not sure I do. If something else since 2002, and one thing is, the relationship with coaches has changed a lot. I never had full-time assistant coaches, even when I was with the national team. Mentoring, to be honest, apologies to the people I worked with a long time ago. And I don't know if I need to apologize to the current ones. I'm sure I do. But I actually have fundamentally changed there. You referenced technology earlier, Dave.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that doesn't exist. And we have bigger teams now, let's say in a university program. And I just think there's way more demands, and we need to work as a coaching staff, as a team. Mm-hmm. And I've changed a lot. Like, I think the old model of the head coach has got to have all the answers. That's like, if you think you do, then, keep trying that, but it ain't going to go that well.
Right.
So I think you need to invest so that you're cohesive as a group, but also, with the younger. I can help a few of you. Did I lose you there?
No, you're still here. Yeah.
Okay. And I can help some of those younger coaches. And I think it's a bit divide and conquer in some ways, right?
Right.
Who's going to take the lead on this? Who's going to do a better job of that? Because the biggest challenge in coaching, I would say overall in the head coach, is the overload of having to feel you got to handle this. You could be doing this 24/7 legitimately. So assistant coaches, investing in them, and to be honest, it's helping immeasurably. Leader skills that people have and perspective that assistants and other people can bring is so incredibly valuable. And so it doesn't even have to be, that they're doing a little bit, and I would say for your coaches communicating with athletes. Can I just say one or two more things there?
Yeah, no, for sure. Go ahead. Yeah, no.
It's something that I think, like, I would recognize, like somebody like Ethan's been with me, like 15, 16 years. He just volunteered his time. He just wanted, coaching was going to be his hobby. So he volunteered to come into the gym. And I think you did this last year, Dave. You said, hey, can I come? I'm going to be in Vancouver. Can I come watch practice? Mm-hmm. Yes. And I think one of the best ways coaches can learn is to get outside and get into other people's gyms. Mm-hmm. And the vast majority of people you've had on these calls, I know, would be more than welcome. Reach out to a level above or a level below, like somebody that is doing a decent job in some area, and just get in there. The second thing I would say is, to answer Kent's question, is what I'm looking for in assistant coaches now is somebody that's going to bring some specific things that supplement what I do and make our program better. Okay, so if you're a young coach out there and you want to be valuable, learn some technology, right? Like, learn how to do that, but don't just know how to do it. Know how to communicate that with the coaching staff and with the players. The next one, you will always. So what is your skill set? If you're an assistant coach looking to get involved with a higher level program, what could you bring? Don't just assume somebody would want it, but what do I bring? Mm-hmm. And maybe that's where you need to go in. Where I'm going to get better as the coach, but what specific things in terms of competence can I do that's going to bring real value? Okay. And so for me, sometimes that's a coach that communicates really well with athletes, right? Yeah. Somebody that knows a certain part of the game really well. On the general things there, the coaches need out there. And as head coaches, we got to do a better job of valuing what they do and growing them to become good head coaches as well.
Great answer. Your feed is cutting in and out here a little bit, so we'll just we're going to finish up anyways. Cal Holford says Doug is one of the best mentors. I've learned so much from him, and I can speak to that. You're an amazing mentor for all the coaches that have been able to work with you and talk with you over the many years you've been a part of this. So, I appreciate your time for coming on and giving some wisdom to all the coaches that tuned in. Is there any final thoughts that you want to say before we part ways?
No, it's been awesome just hearing from so many names to recognize, and just really, thanks for doing these kind of things, and that people reach out. And just, I guess the final thing is, I'm stuck in Shannon's question 2002 to now, and what I hope hasn't changed and what I see among the top coaches is they just want to keep learning, right?
Yeah.
Like, every situation is going to bring learning, and I'm learning from my athletes, assistant coaches. I'm learning from reading and trying to dial into the stuff that's going to help you the most and teach you the most. And it's just in terms of helping you grow as a person and helping other people grow as people. That's what we, the work we do should be towards that aim and that end. So thanks.
Now, is it your birthday tomorrow?
Yes, it is.
Well, happy birthday tomorrow from all the coaches.
You got to do a TikTok dance for me?
Maybe not. But I got accepted into that master's program at UBC, so I'm sure I'll be crossing paths with you a lot more. So,
okay.
But thank you. But thanks for being here, and stay safe under the circumstances of this COVID-19 situation. And we look forward to seeing you on the court real soon. Right on.
That's all you're doing, Dave.
No problem. See you later, Doug.
Bye, coaches.
All right, coaches, that's Doug Reimer from UBC. So thanks for tuning in today. That was a great episode. I will be posting it on on the YouTube page. Check out our new website, VCOC.online. You can get all the links to the YouTube page, the Facebook page, the LinkedIn page, and all that on there. We got 2 next week, and one on Tuesday at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, and one on Friday at 11 a.m. So look forward to seeing you guys back, and stay safe.